For those who are joining us for the first time, my name is Kathy Schultz. I am the Water Education Specialist with the California Department of Water Resources, and I would like to welcome you to Water Wednesdays. I am joined today by Tracy Pettit-Polhemus, who is the Chief of our Water Management Branch. The mission of the California Department of Water Resources is to sustainably manage the water resources of California in cooperation with other agencies to benefit the state's people and protect, restore, and enhance the natural and human environments. Our first 5 Water Wednesdays took us into one of those environments, the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. If you missed those shows, you can still watch them on our YouTube channel. Today and for the next 2 weeks, we are going to be shifting our focus and looking at how we provide water to California during our long, hot, dry summers. So if you're like me and you grew up in California, it is totally normal to go months without rain or even clouds in the sky. It's why we can look forward to dining outside over the summer without too much worry. And that's because we live in a Mediterranean climate. But if you've lived elsewhere or you moved to California from another part of the world, you know how unusual this is. For those of us who have lived here our whole lives, it can sometimes be surprising to learn that most other parts of the world actually get rain during the summer or all year round. And we don't, because we live in this Mediterranean climate. And the Mediterranean climate, with its cool, wet winters and hot, dry summers, is actually only found in about 2% of the world. California, obviously the Mediterranean, a little bit of Chile, South Africa, and Australia. So it's really, really rare. And it makes getting water during the hot, dry summer months, when we really need it to stay hydrated, to grow food, to generate electricity for our air conditioners, it makes getting that water pretty tricky. And so in order to provide water for everyone who needs it, we rely on 3 primary resources. Our reservoirs, like our built reservoirs, like you can see behind me and behind Tracy, our snowpack, and our groundwater. And today, Tracy is going to be talking about the role of reservoirs in getting water to us during the summer. So before I turn it over to Tracy, I just want to go through a few logistics. If you are joining us through Zoom, we've asked you to turn off your video cameras and mute your microphones, but that's so we don't have to hear like the dogs barking in the background or the leaf blowers going. We really do actually want to hear from you. And so you can pose questions in the chat box. If you haven't used Zoom before, you will find the chat box at the bottom of your screen. There's a little speech bubble with the word chat under it. And you can just type in your questions and send them to us, and we'll have Tracy answer as many as we can. If you would like to be able to see what we're saying as well, there is a caption feature available on Zoom. You just go again down to the bottom and you'll see CC for closed caption. You click on that and we've got a captioner typing along as we speak. So that covers how Zoom works. And without any further ado, I'd like to turn things over to Tracy. Tracy, can you tell us about these reservoirs?
Oh, I can't wait to tell you. It's exciting. A lot of good water in there, a lot of fun things you can do with it. So I can't wait to start the presentation.
So Tracy, while we wait to start the presentation, what reservoir are you in front of?
Orville, I think. Yeah.
Lake Oroville?
It's a different perspective, but yeah, it's Orville.
I'm a little further upstream. I'm also in the Feather River watershed, but I believe I'm at Antelope Lake.
Oh yes, with those 3 reservoirs we have up there with Antelope, Frenchman, and Davis.
Yeah, I thought it might be a little cooler there than down here in the Sacramento Valley today.
Yes.
All right, well, tell us about these reservoirs.
Oh, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Tracy Pettit-Polhemus. I work for the California Department of Water Resources, the chief of the water management branch regarding the state water project operations. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to be talking about reservoirs. So I want to first give you an overview of the resources in California. So let's talk about the resources. So there's a couple sources. Let's talk about the rain and the snow. And when the snow falls, it becomes snowpack. And so the rain falls, it comes into river flows, and then it also goes into the groundwater. So you have the snowpack right here, the river flows, and then you have groundwater. And we'll talk about those in a little bit. Then you have the uses. And so when you think about the uses of water, you have your farms, the agriculture, where crops are grown and the water is used for that. You have our use for water supply, where we drink it, we hand wash, we bathe. And then for the fish, you have habitat. Fish need water to live, to eat. And then you have the effects of water. So sometimes you have floods. That's where you get too much water, and it does have safety concerns for both life and property. But then you have the other extreme. You have droughts, and those are when you have too little water, not enough water. And so then you start seeing impacts to our lives, to fish, to water quality, and to the economy. So what is reservoirs? Well, we'll get to that in a second. But it was mentioned earlier, what are the 3 largest places where water is stored? Can you guess that? And they're large. Snowpack, the snow. When snow comes, it packs up in the mountain, and that is a lot of water stored in there. And have you been to the snow? You know how cold it is. When it starts to melt, it becomes water. So this is a big one of the resources where water is stored. The second one is groundwater. So you see groundwater. So it's basically water under the ground. And how it gets there is rain falls and it gets into the ground and it fills up these underground reservoirs, if you will. And how people get it out are through wells. You know, they pump the water for their use. And lastly, is a large body of water. And is it a lake? Is it a reservoir? We'll talk about that. Is it natural? Is it man-made? We'll talk about it. But those are the 3 sources where water is stored: snowpack, groundwater, and reservoirs or lakes. So what is a reservoir? What is it like? It's a large body of water surrounded by constraints, boundaries. It's like a bathtub. You fill it up and the walls of the bathtub hold the water in place. So do you live by a body of water? Have you been to a large body of water? Do you know the name of the closest body of water next to you? So lakes, reservoirs. So here's one. This is a lake. A lake is natural. It's not man-made. And that's the difference between a lake and a reservoir. A lake is natural, reservoirs are man-made. And so it's a low point surrounded by the mountains. The next one is, here's a reservoir. Generally, reservoirs are built on the river. And you can see that there's a dam or a wall holding back the water, and then it's surrounded by the hillside. So now, can you recognize, do you know the difference now? Now you know the difference between what is natural and man-made, what is a lake, what is a reservoir. There are other types of reservoirs. This one is a hole in the ground, and they built mounds of earth around it. And so then how they get water there is through pipes, through canals, and they fill it that way. Now, one of the things about when a reservoir is not built in the river, when they're built from just a hole, or if it's not built on the river, they're called off-stream reservoirs. And then the third one, reservoir type, is a storage, a water tank. It's a closed container. Do you see these around? These are all in towns and countries. So how much water do you think a reservoir can hold? And they vary depending on the size. Now, for me, I talk about acre feet. That's a volume. And what is an acre feet? Well, an acre feet is, picture a football field with 1 foot of water. A football field's about an acre, and you fill it with 1 foot. So now you have an acre foot. Now think of 1 million acre feet, which, since I'm in Sacramento, you think of Folsom Dam, which is about 1 million acre feet of capacity. That is about 2,400 football stadiums. So we talked about rain and snow, but they are so important. And reservoirs capture this water during the winter time, and it's later released at a time when we need it, especially during the summer when it's hot and dry and there's no rain. So what are the uses? Can you tell? There's several uses in a reservoir. One of them, here's a map of different uses. So one of them is, do you like water? Well, everyone likes water to swim, to boat. Do you like to boat? Do you like to fish? Well, those fun activities are recreation. And so in a reservoir, they provide that. And the State Water Project has over 21 reservoirs. And so one thing about having fun on the reservoir is being safe. The next item or use in a reservoir is water supply. And so water supply helps the farmers to grow the foods, the crops, fruits and veggies, nuts, things like that. They grow those for us to eat, and they grow hay and alfalfa, things for animals to eat, and corn. The other one are factories. They need water for their production. And then flood control. So what happens is reservoirs capture the water during the winter time, and they hold it back to protect downstream, and then they later release it. And so this is flood protection. And so reservoirs provide that. And they provide wildlife habitat for the fish, for the environment. So releases are made from the reservoir. They help the fish with their lives, where they live and what they eat. And the other thing too is, when you think of a reservoir, they capture this water, they hold it. And when you think of the summer, when things are really dry and the rivers are really low, releases are made out of the reservoir to maintain a higher level of water in the rivers to help fish. So there are pros and cons, pluses or minuses. I mean, with reservoirs, I mean, a minus could be that it blocks fish from moving upstream. When you think of, upstream of the reservoir, it can block nutrient-rich materials from making its way downstream. It can force people, because it floods an area, it can force people to move. But the pluses are that it does provide water supply. It does provide the ability to have fun in the water, recreation abilities. It does provide flood protection. It does provide water for the environment. And if you have more fish, then you can do more fishing. The other plus on it is that it captures water, and it could be during a high water event when there's a lot of water, or just it captures water during the winter and it later is released at a time that we need it throughout the year. So the next thing is this is a precipitation map, and it covers California. And one thing about it is it covers, this is 5 inches or less in areas. And then up here can be up to 200 inches. And so what you're seeing is, in the North Coast, you can see anywhere between 30 to maybe 100 inches in this area. You can see it down along the mountains. You see about that level. But then you can see other areas that are really dry up in the Tulare Lake basin, or down in the valleys, and here in the southeast corner of Sacramento. Now, where you live, do you see where you live? Are you near somewhere where you get a lot of rain? Are you in an area that's dry? Now, one thing about the rain in California, it generally comes between October to May. December through February are the months that we have the highest amount of rain that comes into California. So when you look at that, there are years that we get a lot of rain. Mind you, this is an average. Some years we get a lot of rain, some years we don't. Reservoirs, when you think about it, they're there to help mitigate or help in the difference in the timing of when water becomes available, like I said, between October and May, to when they're not available, other times of the year, when it's really dry and when we need it. So reservoirs help with that timing. So then when we're looking at, so when you look at this map, where do you think you live? Here's Sacramento. Here's San Francisco. Here's Los Angeles. So when you think of these highly populated areas, you can see that they are in areas that are dry. So when you see where you live, again, are you in an area where there's a lot of water or areas that are dry? How much water falls where you live? In Sacramento, you can see maybe up to 20 inches, maybe in that vicinity. But as you can see, there are areas that are really dry. This is the Sacramento Valley. And again, it's a dry area, growing rice and orchards. Here's the San Joaquin Valley. And it grows some citrus, a lot of nuts. But as you can tell, it's very dry in this area. And then up here in the Tule Lake Basin, and down here, when you think of Coachella Valley and Imperial Valley, look how dry it is. You get less than 5 inches. So these are areas that we deliver water to. So the State Water Project delivers water in the Feather River, and it goes down into the Delta, and we deliver it to the North Bay Aqueduct, to the South Bay Aqueduct. We deliver it, or a South Bay of the Bay Area and the North Bay of the Bay Area, and then the San Joaquin. So we deliver water down the San Joaquin. We also deliver water to the Central Coast that covers San Luis and Santa Barbara, but also to Southern California. We provide water. We have a mixture of both cities, urban, and agricultural contractors, people who take water from us. So about 2/3 of California residents take all or a part of water from the State Water Project. With our water, we irrigate about 750,000 acres, and we contribute to the economy of California. So this is a snapshot or a discussion of reservoirs. So I hope you've captured it and have a good understanding. Reservoirs are exciting. They have so many benefits and purposes, and we all receive those benefits, especially in the sense of from good, clean water supply for, like I said, for drinking, for bathing, for hand washing, animals, flood protection. Anyway, that's all it is on reservoirs. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. So if you want to stop sharing your screen, we can come back up. And no, it's a really cool map. I kind of hate to ask you not to, but I think it's easier for people to see. If we come back up, there we go. All right. So I had a couple questions come in. It is a really cool map. It's so telling how dry so many critical parts of California are. Our major urban centers and our major agricultural areas. You know, this moving the water around is so essential for it. And I think that map really showed that well. Pull up a couple questions here. One of our viewers is curious, what is the biggest reservoir in California?
Shasta at 4.5 million acre feet. So just when I talked about 2,400 football stadiums, that's almost 10,000 football stadiums.
Wow.
You know, when you think of it. But Shasta is 4.5 million acre feet. Oroville is second largest at 3.5 million acre feet.
Okay, so Oroville is even bigger than Folsom here in Sacramento.
Yes. Great.
So we had a really dry year this past year. We had about 50% of our snowpack. How are the reservoirs doing this year?
Well, that's interesting, and you're right. So it depends where you are in California of the various reservoirs. From a capacity point of view, they're around 75 to 85% of capacity, and that's to be, we're now in the, where the storage starts to decrease because we're making releases for people, for fish, things like that. Historically, on average, some of them are slightly above average, some of them are at average, some of them are below. So it really depends where you are in the state.
Okay. So speaking of where people are in the state, can you explain a little more how the water gets from the reservoirs to the places that need it?
Oh, sure. So what happens is water is released from the reservoir and it goes into the river. People have pipes, and what happens is the water from the reservoirs, there are pipes or there are canals that capture this water. And then what happens is the water is moved in the various canals, pipes, facilities. And so they go to a treatment center, they go to where the water district that runs the different in the different communities, and so it gets treated, and then from there there's a distribution within the community of pipes, and it's distributed that way. And so when you open your water, it can be coming from a reservoir, or it could even be coming from groundwater, but that's how it gets there.
Okay, great. Can you tell us a little bit about your job and what it is that you do? If you do have like an average day or an average week.
No, my job varies, and it depends if it's during the winter time or the spring time or the summer or the fall. So the seasonality affects what I do. So when you think of how big California is, and you had mentioned it, and the variability both from a precipitation, from a topography, from the kind of population, we saw that there's a lot of water in the north and not as much in the south, but there's a lot of people that live south and they don't live north. And so what happens is in my job, we look at how much water is coming in. So we try to make a forecast. We get a forecast. We see how much water there is. We see what people need for agriculture or for cities. And then we come up with a plan on how to deliver the water. And it's all tied to how much water we have and how much people need. But we also have rules. We have rules to manage the water. So the rules are how much we need to release for the fish, things like that. And so we're always evaluating that. Definitely on an annual basis, we come up with a big operations plan, but then we start looking at it on a monthly, weekly, daily, even hourly. So I have a team and we get together and we work on this. We look at the plan and go forward.
Sounds like a lot of fine tuning as conditions change throughout the year. Do reservoirs also help with flood protection?
They do. What they do is when you know that the winter's coming, and we get a forecast sometimes of how wet the winter may be, we'll have the reservoirs at a lower storage volume. And so that when we know the rains are coming, it will capture the water and hold it. And so and minimize potential downstream damages by holding the water in the reservoir. So they do provide flood protection.
If we didn't have reservoirs, what do you think California would be like?
It'd be pretty dry. I mean, the whole idea behind reservoirs is to capture water when it is available and make it available at a time when the demands and when people need it. And if we didn't have reservoirs, it'd be a lot of places that are in production or people live, they wouldn't be able to live there if there wasn't water, and reservoirs help with that.
Great. What are some things that people can do to help conserve water, to make sure that our reservoirs, if we have another dry year like we just did, what are some things people can do?
Be conservative, practice conservation, be water wise, don't let the water run, both down your sink or in your lawn. Have drought resistant plants. These are things that water is precious and there is a finite amount. And so what we can do is just make sure that we don't be wasteful of the water.
One of our viewers is wondering, what is your educational background? How did you become somebody who fine tunes the reservoir storage and management?
Well, I've been an engineer. So my background is I have a Bachelor of Science degree in civil engineering. I'm a licensed engineer with the state of California. I've always loved dams and I've always loved water. And I started working in operations back in 2001. And that's how it started to grow. And one thing about the variability in our weather or in the precipitation is that, you can have a wet year, but each wet year is different. Each dry year is different. No one year is ever the same as the previous or in the past year. So I've learned through schooling and education, but also on the job. And I've taken additional classes through work to always learn. Great. Conferences, seminars, things like that.
Mm-hmm. How common is it to build reservoirs in and use it to store water? Is this something that's unique to California, or do we see this elsewhere in the United States or around the world?
We do see dam build. I mean, there are dams throughout the state, throughout the world, throughout the U.S., throughout the world. So dam is as far as the frequency. There's a lot of factors that go into building reservoirs. There are some through programs in California that they're looking at potential new reservoirs and also expanding existing reservoirs.
Interesting. Do you know how many reservoirs there are in California? I think you said there was 21 with the State Water Project. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you know how many other dams and reservoirs there are?
That I'm not so sure. I'm thinking there's a lot. Maybe over 1,000. I mean, because when you think of it, there are different size reservoirs. So a rancher, someone can build a large body of water, a reservoir. Vineyards use reservoirs for their crops. So there's a lot out there. Great. I think over 1,000 possibly.
Right. I'm going to ask you one final question. What is your biggest concern when you look at the world and our water supply?
Is the recognition that it is a finite supply, in that the demands are getting greater, and there's a lot of demands, both when you think of on this finite supply. And I think that we all need to be mindful of using this water appropriately and conservatively, because it's so precious. And not everyone, we're lucky if we're by a body of water, a reservoir. There's, some places, they're pretty dry, as you saw on the map. There are areas that are really dry that don't have water. And so water is precious. So
just recognizing that this is a really important resource and that we all need to care for it.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you so much, Tracy, for joining us to talk about the importance of our reservoirs and kind of expanding the definition. I hadn't thought about the water tanks that you see all over town, but you're right. I mean, that's a really important reservoir for people. It reserves, it provides us with water. If you'd like to learn more about our water supply and storage, you can visit DWR's webpage, water.ca.gov. And we have a specific website that talks a little bit more about water supply. And if you do plan to visit a reservoir this summer, as Tracy said, it's really important to be safe. So we have some fun materials that you can order for your kids or even for yourself that help share ideas about how you can be safe on the water. Because it's really important to be safe out there. Wear your life jackets, and just take the appropriate measures. I'd like to thank everyone at home again for joining us. We will be back next Wednesday at 1:00 p.m. with Sean de Guzman, and he will be talking about the importance of our winter snows during our hot summer months. We hope to see you then. Have a great week. And if you're out on a reservoir, have fun and stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.